This has haunted me for a long time. I was about 19 or 20 at the time, and I was living in Savannah, Georgia. I drank a lot, had a crappy fake ID. I worked this terrible job as a grunt laborer, the kind where you go to those temp labor agencies like Able Body and Labor Finders. I would show up at 4 a.m., work until 5 p.m., and drink myself to sleep after only taking home maybe $60 for the day. I was supposed to go into work this particular morning, but I decided to skip. I called the girlfriend and told her I want to go to the beach. I had already started drinking. She comes over. We hop in my big, ugly van, pack up some rods, and head to the beach. I decided to have a drink across from the beach at this little bar. This is where the story gets interesting. Shortly after ordering my drink, I get this really weird feeling. I became hyper aware of my surroundings. The door opens and I see this guy walk in out of my peripheral vision. There was a seat between me and my girlfriend, but the bar was empty at like 9 a.m. and he could have sat anywhere else. Yet, he chooses to sit right between her and I. Then he starts doing this thing with his fingers. The bar top was reflective, and he takes his fingers like two little legs and starts just walking with them, skating with them on top of the counter. This isn't something out of the ordinary, but I took notice because when I was in school, I did that all of the time. I pretended I had rollerblades on my fingers and that I was skating around my desk. I hated school and was always distracting myself, so I became kind of mesmerized by this. That's when he looks at me, and in this really thick kind of Germanic or Nordic accent, he says, "I notice you're a man who pays attention to detail. I'm also a man who pays attention to detail." Now, before I continue, I have to describe this guy. He had this short, spiky hair that was bleached at the tips, kind of like a late 90s style. He had really expensive clothes on, like a nice Prada leather jacket, nice designer jeans, really nice boots. He seemed like a kind of gay guy with awesome fashion sense and really distinctive taste. I always remember this because I think to myself, some weird homeless crazy guy couldn't have afforded these clothes. Anyway, the other thing that stuck out was his eyes, and they were piercing gray. It reminded me of a husky's eyes, but his pupils just stayed this disturbing pinpoint size. They were just extremely small, which caused his look to be kind of terrifying. His teeth were normal, right? But not at the same time. I don't know how to explain it. They were sharper than they should be, as if they were filed slightly. His hands were normal, but his fingernails were slightly long and pointed, as if he deliberately did it. He kept licking his teeth too, as if he were salivating. The thing about this guy is that you look at him, and everything seems normal, but off at the same time. So you're questioning if you're crazy for thinking this. This guy then begins to start talking about the relationship between me and my girlfriend, but really strangely. He's talking about how beautiful she is and how I should pay more attention to her. Shortly after he began talking like this, I had this almost knowing feeling come over me. Like I knew this guy wasn't human. I look at my girlfriend and say, "You need to leave." She just kind of looks at me like she knows too. Without a word of protest, she gets up quietly and leaves. Later, I learned that she went next door to get a coffee. That's when this guy literally says to me with the utmost confidence, "You were supposed to go fishing today." He points at the beach across the street. "If you had, I would have drowned you in that ocean." And I shit you not, he fucking hissed. Again, for some reason, this overwhelming calm had come over me. I just ask, "Who are you?" He answers back with this crazy guttural language, like Akbak, but it was really long. It sounded Arabic or Hebrew or something. I just, for some reason, without skipping a beat, and I have no idea why I was so calm to this day, ask, "Say it in a way that I can understand." He says, "You can call me Jimmy C. I jumped off the San Francisco Bridge years ago, and we've been watching you." From there on out, he never referred to himself as me or I, but only we. The conversation became something very strange after this. He was saying things like, "We see you taking a bath. We wish we too could feel the warmth of the water and the comfort of the steam," and other stuff. He kept buying me drinks too, specifically whiskey sours. It was like he had an endless supply of money. He smoked Marlboro ultralight cigarettes. After I don't know how long, because I lost my sense of time, I told him I'm going to leave. I walk next door, I get my girlfriend, and she's stone silent. We start driving home. Don't say a word. Then I just ask, "Do you know what that was?" And she just says, "That was a demon." This girl had parents that were scientists. She was very analytical, completely non-religious, and that was the first thing she said out of her mouth. Now, I didn't say this part before because to me, this is the most important aspect of the story. So I'll say it now, because it's what happened after this that screwed me up for fucking years. The last thing this Jimmy C guy said to me before I left is, "Look at my car." I look outside and I see one of those newer Volkswagen Beetles. It was white. What does the license plate say? I look at the plate and it literally says, "Fierce." He looks me dead in the eyes and says, "The next time you see me, I'll be driving a black Mercedes and the license plate will say Utopia." Stupid, right? That night I was still calm. I don't know why. I felt like that guy in Office Space after his hypnotherapist died right in front of him, and he was weirdly zen. But my girlfriend started having terrible nightmares of this guy's head just staring at her in her dreams. Weeks went by, and that's when the encounter started affecting me. I found myself becoming paranoid about that black Mercedes. Every black car I saw, I checked if it was a Mercedes. If it was, I immediately looked at the license plate. I started doing it when I watched TV or movies as well. I couldn't stop. Now I'm going to fast forward a bit. About 10 years go by. I'm 29, and in silence, when I'm alone, when I'm drinking, I often think about this encounter. I still look at black Mercedes every time they pass by, but I'm not so much anxious about it anymore, as I'm more curious. And I remember that time my girlfriend at the time always kept a journal. By now, I'm pretty sure that I'm insane. Maybe I was drunk. Maybe I'm not remembering any of this correctly. After years of trying to find news articles of a Jimmy C who committed suicide off the San Francisco Bridge, looking at black cars, and so on, I feel like I'd grown out of it. Yet still, I had to know. So last year, I tracked down my ex-girlfriend. We ended on bad terms. I found out she's a school teacher in Wisconsin, has married a woman, and is actually trying to have a child. I figured she wouldn't talk to me, but I sent her a Facebook message anyways. I asked her if she could find the journal from that day because I had to know if her events lined up with mine. Sure enough, she had it, and it contained even more detail than what I remembered because she had literally written it at the coffee shop next door right after it happened. I understand the early judgments made by society. Distancing myself makes it seem like I'm trying to escape a crime. I'm not. I'm only trying to give myself some space and fully take in what happened before I turn myself in. The fact is, no one is more destroyed than I am. She was more than a girlfriend, a soon-to-be fiancé. She was my everything. What happened that night was nothing but tragic. Looking back, we've been in a relationship for a year and 3 months. This was the first serious long-term relationship for the both of us, so everything we did was a new experience. We traveled the world, our families met, had fights and made up, talked seriously about marriage and kids, the whole deal. I would never physically hurt her in any way. She would occasionally hit or slap me when I said something stupid, but I'd laugh it off. She met all of my friends and family. Wherever I went, she was there. She would come to my house from Kitchener every week, starting Fridays, and would stay for 3 to 4 days. We were incredibly used to each other. The last month of our relationship, I started asking her to give me more space so I can work on my job. She started coming less and less like I asked. During March, her friend Anna got pregnant. Melinda and Anna then moved in together because Anna has a big family and wanted privacy in case she keeps the baby. I never met any of Melinda's friends at this stage. 1.2 years in, she told me all her friends only use her. That part was incredibly clear to me. They would only contact her if they needed their hair done or had boyfriend problems, including Anna. 1.3 months in, Melinda and I got into an argument via text, and our relationship ended. I went to her apartment that day to try and talk. Every time I tried breaking up with her, she would call my mom or drive to my house, so this time I figured I'd do the same. Upon arrival, I was confronted by Anna's brother and her boyfriend. A physical altercation took place, and the police were involved. At this stage, I knew if we were to patch things up, it would be rough. We didn't see each other for a few weeks. Later on in April, Melinda and I started texting each other again. We agreed to see each other and talk. She was originally supposed to drive down to my house, but felt sick, so I told her I would come and she agreed. Melinda told me Anna and her boyfriend were present. I didn't mind. Upon arrival, it was just Melinda. She said Anna went to drop Christina off at a club. She invited me to her room right away. We cuddled and talked. We never spend so much time away from each other. We just cuddled, kissed, and talked about everything. A while later, Anna came back with another friend. She asked Melinda if everything was okay, and Melinda said yes. We continued to talk and finally decided it was worth to try one more time. However, Melinda didn't want anyone to know, especially her family. She said after the police were involved in a physical altercation with Anna's brother and boyfriend, things wouldn't be right if they knew right away. I agreed. We kept it on the down low until things cooled down. We continued to talk. Anna and her other friend left the house to grab food. We both let everything out, and our relationship was back on track. As I'm getting ready to leave, she asked me if I had done anything with any other girls while we were on break, or any time we were on break. I told her we needed to be honest and said yes and told her about it. She started freaking out, wouldn't say a word, and just kept slapping me with tears in her eyes. Slaps turned into hits. I told her I was sorry, but if she didn't stop, I would do something back. She didn't stop. I then stupidly pushed her, harder than I expected. She fell against the sink. This was the first time I ever did something physically violent towards her. I told her I was sorry. She said, "Leave. Leave now." I began saying sorry even more and asked if I could get a hug. She was still crying. I go up to her to try and give her a hug. Almost out of nowhere, she grabs a knife by the sink. Initially, I thought she was just going to hold it to try and tell me to leave. She doesn't. She comes at me in full force, aiming towards my face. I tell her to stop. She doesn't. I tried grabbing the knife but ended up cutting my hands. After a few cuts, I lost it. I freaked out. I was scared and in a state of shock. Never in 100 years did I think she would use a knife against me. Out of shock and fear, I grab one. I hit her with it, almost blindly, a few times. I didn't know what happened. I was just confused, shocked, and scared. I had no intentions of that happening. When I left, I honestly thought she just passed out. Then I looked at the blood and started freaking out and just ran. I didn't know for sure she had died until the next day. I honestly had no intentions of ever doing that to her. I thought I was just protecting myself. She was with me the most. We were each other's best friends. She would tell me everything. Her deepest secrets that not even her friends or family knows. The amount of regret and sadness is beyond words. Everyone else is just reading or talking about it. I lived it. I was there. I did it. Every waking second I relived that moment. At this stage, life is really not worth it for me. Although it was out of shock and protection, I should have just accepted getting hit. Maybe I would have lived. Maybe not. Anything is better than living with this. I'm reading the news and they are claiming it was targeted or an act of terrorism. Why would I buy her roses that night if I was planning on killing her? I didn't even go home that night. I always have a passport in the car and decided to just get away for a few days before turning myself in or killing myself. If any of it was planned, I would have taken my stuff. I would have taken cash. I'm in the United States with $200, no clean clothes, nothing. I didn't intend on any of it. It was out of fear and protecting myself alongside shock. I'm sorry to everyone, especially Melinda's family. I know it will not be accepted, but I know I didn't mean anything bad to have happened that night when I went there. Rest in peace, my beautiful. I hope you forgive me in the afterlife.